everyone, I hope you're well. I'm just making a few final notes. I've got a lot of things that I want to show you today using the technique that we're going to use. I hope you're all well and that you're all ready to get started. One thing that we're going to feature a lot today is sandpaper. Now, I should really have a perfect sheet to show you, but I haven't managed to get back to a hardware store to pick some new sheets up, and this is my last piece. So we're going to use this today, and then I really need to get some. Today is all about showing you an easy way to create really nice smooth curves. And don't get me wrong, I am a huge fan of needle turn applique, and I will show you down the trick how to get a beautiful curve using it. But first of all, it's a really nice journey, if you like, to perfect your invisible slip stitches or your applique stitch before you get to the needle turn part. So I thought today's technique would be a great one to do to give you a little bit of a head start on some beautiful smooth curves, and I've got lots of applications to show you. First of all, let's start with a basic circle. So the first thing I want you to do is head into the kitchen, go through the glasses cabinet, the mug cupboard, wherever you can find yourself a really nice circle. I've grabbed a glass this morning. I won't use my coffee cup because it's full. So I'm going to pop just my glass down onto my sandpaper and draw a really nice smooth circle on there like that. So it's just a straightforward circle, and then we're going to cut it out. Now remember, please do not use your fabric scissors, or they're going to be blunt in one go. You can see mine have a P, will be around upside down, AP for paper. This also means people do not touch the perfect scissors that do not have a P on them. It's very important if you're in a house with people that use scissors that they know the scissor rules. Okay. So I'm just going to cut this out. Now this technique, oh look, sandpaper, my first quilting class that I did, everything was done with sandpaper. My teacher had come back from America and learnt all these amazing techniques, but this was one that she taught me for doing smooth curves that I have used ever since. We were even pre-shaping squares and triangles with the iron over sandpaper templates, and I think back it was hilarious, but it did work. Okay, I've got my circle. Now I'm going to pop it down onto my fabric. I will draw it on with a pen so that you can see it. Just straight round like that. Now if you do have templates that are made of perspex and circles and things, they're going to be great to use to create the perfect circle to draw onto your sandpaper, but you're still going to need the sandpaper. You won't be able to use this technique purely with the template, so just keep that in mind. So that is drawn onto there, you can see that. Oh, it's going to focus, there you go. Now we're going to cut it out. While you're cutting it out, I want you to add 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, a really generous one. And it doesn't have to be perfect because it's the sandpaper that's going to give us the final shape. I've got squeaky scissors. Sorry about that. You only realise these things when you're showing people. It's either the squeaky scissors or Ginny the cat's bell you're going to have to deal with today. Okay, mental note, get new scissors or get these at least oiled. So there's my circle, and you can see on the back I've got my generous 1/4 of an inch seam. So now what we want to do is actually pull that seam allowance up and over the edges of our template. And to do that, you can see I've got my thimble on already. We're going to sew a really nice little gathering stitch. So grab yourself a really nice strong needle. Applique needles are for applique, and piecing needles are for piecing and gathering. And there is a difference between them. If I haven't mentioned it before, I think I did, but you really want a nice strong needle, straight needle, when you're doing gathering and piecing. so that you've got some strength there. Okay, I'm going to, first go, that's a relief. Pop a little knot in the end of your thread. I wind mine around the needle a few times, then pull the needle between my fingers, and magically I end up with a knot at the end. Right, so now what we're going to do is just a little gathering stitch right round the edge. Doesn't have to be minute, but don't make them too big. If you make them sort of, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, then you're going to get a really nice smooth gather and curve. If they're too big, it's going to have a few points on it. Any minute now, I predict a cat is going to jump up onto the table. Do you think I'm right, Kate? Oh, hey Jen. She knows when it's filming day now. All right, I'm nearly there. I find as well a nice fine thread for this step is good. So if you have an applique or a fine thread that you use for applique, particularly for this step, it's nice to work with. All right, so I'm going to leave that flat, all done. And I'll just leave about 1 inch, 2 inches of thread. That's a very big inch, 2 inches of thread on the end. Now what we're going to do is sit our template sand side down onto the wrong side of our piece, and we're going to pull it up. And you can see what happens. So it neatly pulls that whole seam allowance up and over the edge. And there you've got your perfect circle. So I know many of us quake in fear at the thought of trying to needle turn a beautiful smooth circle. And the first time that I saw some amazing small circles on a needle turn applique quilt, I could not believe it, and it almost discouraged me from ever trying to do it. But luckily I had a very experienced friend called Maria Waters walk up behind me and go, no, 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 there are other ways to do it. And of course it was the sandpaper technique. And if you haven't worked out why is the sandpaper so good for now, it's because now I'm going to go and hit it with a hot steam iron. So unlike using a plastic template or a cardboard one, the steam's not going to distort it, it's not going to melt it, and the sandpaper, because it is like fine glass, it's super heat set, but also it stops it from slipping inside the circle. So I'm going to pop over to the iron and do that, and then we can come back and have a look. Okay, so I've given that a really good press, and I'm just going to ease my sandpaper template out. And of course I'm going to be able to reuse that lots of time. And then that thread that I had on there, I can just give it a little pull and it will pop it back into shape, and there is my circle. So that is a great way just to get a perfect circle that you can then slip stitch on, and we'll do that in a moment. But I wanted to show you a couple of examples of where I've just used a straight circle like this. I'm going to cut off that excess thread as well and set this aside. I would actually probably give this another press from the right side down now with a little bit of starch so that it stays in its shape. And if you do plan on making a lot of them and not using them for a while, keep them flat and maybe even have something on the top of them. So if you make a heap, sit them in a little bag and pop a book on top or something so that they don't, so the seam allowance doesn't start to rise up again from underneath. How's that? Simple, really easy way to do it. Okay, so let's have a look at a couple of examples. And our first one I want to show you takes it to a large scale. And sandpaper I did still use, but if you wanted to use 2 or 3 pieces of cardboard for this particular project, you could. So this is my, without knocking the coffee over, this is my Oriental blue work quilt. And we have 2 of these that are stitcheries. The other one is Japanese gold work, but they're all done with Japanese mon symbols, which is circular. So I'll just hold that up to show you. You can see they've got the nice big circles on them. Now I have obviously completed hours and hours of embroidery, or someone else has helped me do hours and hours of embroidery, and you can see that there. So once we've completed all of the stitchery, we've actually cut out a big sandpaper plate, literally the big circle plate, and we've put it behind, centered the stitchery, done the little gathering stitch I just showed you, and pulled it up. So you can use it for large things as well as small. Now the other little trick that we did with this one, and I've got another application to show you, is we've popped a really thin adhesive layer of Pellin or adhesive batting behind, just a thin polyester one, and it gives you a lovely effect because it puffs up the actual plates of embroidery. So that's just another little feature that you can add in. If you do decide to do that, make your circle of adhesive batting just that little bit smaller, because it needs to fit up and under that seam allowance that you've pulled over to the wrong side. So that's just one example. Oh, I'll just show you here, there are smaller ones as well that we have with the 4 symbols for spring, summer, autumn and winter. So you can see there's little ones there that we've done, and then appliqued them onto a background. So that's one example, and I'll just stand up and get this one. Oh, this is a big oldie. So old that I've looked at it the other day and it's looking so sad. I'm going to do it all again, and this will be the first of our block of the months that are coming up, that we will run as a subscription through our YouTube channel, which will be so much fun because you'll be able to get your kit in the mail, and then every week we'll sit down together and do a different technique. Okay, so the first one here, and I should point out the new one that we're doing has an Australian feel to it, so a lot of things are going to get tweaked a little bit to Australian flowers and Australian fabrics and themes. But here you go, that's another one here. Now if I hold this up close, so I think this was one of my old cross-nose salad bowls from the 1980s, but you can see I've just done a little circle here, and it's also got little Suffolk puffs, and we'll come to those in a moment because the first step that we've done for our pre-shaping we use for those as well. So that's one example, and then the other one, wait, I've got to find it, it's here somewhere. This quilt's got 26 blocks in it, so now I go looking for something. Oh, here's another one. There's a little one, and this has been used the same technique, so I've just got a little one inside the centre of my pointed Dresden, and I still haven't found the one I'm looking for. It must be on this side. Here it is. So one of those gorgeous big, I think they're called an Ohio rose. So you can see that one there. I've popped that in the middle of that traditional, very traditional block as well. So you'll find lots of uses for them. I'm going to pop that down there, and then you think, well, that's just a circle, Leesa, what are we going to do besides that? Well, what you can do is obviously fussy cut from different parts of prints. Now that is just so much fun. So if you find little motifs that you like, a little bit like you do when you're fussy cutting to put into paper pieced hexagons and things like that, you can pick a particular part from a print. So that's one thing you can do, and if you are going to do that, make one of these out of clear plastic first as well, so you can lay it over your print to see exactly where it's going to sit before you line it up with the sandpaper template. Then the next thing you can do is pre-piece the fabric that you're going to use. And this is what I have been doing with all of these. So I'm working on a new quilt at the moment that uses one of our charm square packs that we do. I think there's 47.5-inch squares in a pack. And then what I'm going to do, just to show you, is overlay them over an ombre. Now remember we talked about ombres? These are going to be my background squares or rectangles. So what I have done, let me just get a pen here. The way that we have effectively cut up those charm squares, we do all this cutting and strip sewing and cross cutting, so it's a really effective, quick way to get us to having a square that has 4 different fabrics in it, like that. And that, can you see that? That is so not perfect, but I'm sure you get the idea. And then this template, again, you lay straight over the middle of those squares, so that when I cut it out, my circle, did you see that? I put down one I didn't like the edge on to show you a better one, is going to look like that. So it is in a way a little bit like fussy cutting. And the trick to doing this is, of course, I will mark my sandpaper template in the 4 different quadrants so that it perfectly lines up with my block, so that I get, do you know what I mean? So that I line up the marks with the seams so that I get a perfect 4 quarters happening like that. So you could pre-piece, you could strip sew, you could do anything, and then go back and lay your template over the top. One little trick, if you do it as well though, make sure that you press your seams open, because when you come back to do that gathering stitch around the outside, and you'll see on this one I have done that, you don't want the bulk for your smooth gather going through too much thickness on that edge, so always press your seams open. Now these I can show you where we're up to, so you can see I've got those done. I have a lot to do, and yes, you will see it in a leftover show in a couple of weeks, because I'm determined to get it done. So I've got a lot of long strips, and unusually I'm putting 4 on these because there are 4 quadrants. I usually, like most people, work in odd numbers, but with these I'm working in 4 blocks, 4 circles on a block. And then I've got some smaller ones that are just a square. And you can see, this is an iron-off pen that's still on here, but I have done lines through the centre in both directions so that I could align my pieced circles. Now while I've got this one out, shall we have a quick look at slip stitching, because I know a lot of you are not happy with your slip stitching. I should really work to show you this, to sew this in this thread, which is a super duper matching blue, so you can't even see it, but for your benefit and to prove you can create an invisible slip stitch, I will get out a red. Oh, pressure's on actually if I get out a red. Is that going to show? Oh yes. What I find people try and do with a slip stitch, and I apologise if you're right-handed, you have the ability to flip your screen, now's a good time to do it. And for the left-handeds out there, hopefully it will make sense. A lot of people seem to feel that all of their thread needs to sit on the top of their work, but it actually all sits underneath on the wrong side. Okay, so let's have a look at how to do a really good slip stitch. Now, I'll show you. I'm going to come up right on the fold from underneath. So there's my little needle coming up from underneath. I'm going to pull that through. So my thread is right on the edge. Then what a lot of people do is they'll travel along on the top of their work and they'll go down and up in a little bit. But that means all of that thread there is still going to be on the top of your work. So what you actually want to do, where you've come up on the edge, I want you to go straight back down underneath onto the back of your work, travel along underneath, and then come up on the top again. So if you have a look on the back, you can see there's my needle on the back. So when I pull this through, you can see that okay. When I pull that through, that's it. That little loop is going to completely disappear, because the only time it was on the top is a minute amount between where it's come through on the fold and going straight back underneath. Gone straight back underneath. I don't know what happened then. Alright, so we're going to do it again. We go straight back down, travel along underneath, and come up on the fold again. I usually do 3 or 4 really lightly with my tension, without pulling it, because if you pull every time, you'll end up with a little scallop along your edge. So I do 3 or 4, then I'll grab my thread and I'll give it a tug, and you can feel them just click in. So now, unclicked, you can't see any red on the front, and it's all on the back. This is a really, it's a really nice and quite important technique, if I may play the quilt police for a minute, technique to learn before you move on to doing needle turn applique, which is using this technique but then also incorporating turning the seam allowance under with your needle. So it's all gone and it's all on the back. Okay, all right, so enough lectures for today on doing stitching. So let's go back and have a look at our list again of what's up next. Okay, so it says we are going to fussy cut some shapes and shape them with sandpaper, but it also says it's time to bake cake. So let's head into the kitchen, start our cake today, which is a yummy lemon almond syrup cake. We're not playing healthy quilter today, we'll get back to that another time, but this is delicious, so let's go and make some. Today we are going to make Mum's lemon almond syrup cake. Now I call it Mum's because she found it, tweaked it, wrote it up, made it heaps of times so that I fell in love with it and had to have the recipe. So this is hers. I do not have one of those flash graters. I've got the old-fashioned type that I'm using here because we need the zest and the juice of 1 lemon. And Kate bought me some beautiful lemons to use, and I don't know if you realise, oh, I'm sure you do, that there are different between lemons. Mum and Dad used to have lavender farm, which I spent many, many happy years on, and we had lots and lots of lavender and lots of lemons, 60 lemon trees actually. So I got to understand a little bit of the difference between them. I certainly learned which ones had the thorns when it came to picking them. But I'm still mad about lemons, and it still pains me to have to buy a lemon. So if you've got a friend with a lemon tree, make sure you put them on the Christmas card list because you always need lemons. Okay, I've got my rind and I'm going to juice my lemons in a minute. I'll move these out of the way now that we're good to go. Put these over here. This recipe has been set up by weight, so it's weigh everything in, and while it's sometimes easier to do it with a cup, if you've got a metal a metal mixing bowl, then you can just put that on the scales and keep weighing in. So in a way it is easier. I'm using my big ceramic one so it looks impressive for you today. So we're going to weigh things out separately. I need 150 grams of plain flour. Oh, now see, there's already flour in there, so I tried to be impressive and checked that the flour actually fitted in this bowl before we filmed. So I thought, oh, if I get it all in there and it doesn't fit, that's going to be really embarrassing. So 150 grams. I'm sure if you're going to make it a lot, you could work out what that is in cups. But I've always just used the same recipe. So we're going to pop that into our mixing bowl. We do not need to sieve it or anything, so things stay nice and fast and quick. Then we need, a teaspoon of baking powder. That was Kate dropping her camera lens. We'll let her off because she's going to put the butter in the microwave for me in a minute. So we're going to pop that in there. Then we're going to add 50 grams of almond milk. Check out the impressive, beautiful container I keep it in. Plastic. Actually, I don't like to open up my almond milk too early. I've learned over time if I put a whole heap in a big jar, it does go rancid if it's not used for a while. So that's my excuse. 50 grams. Oh, those hazelnut macaroons that we made in the first show, you can make them with almond meal as well, but they'll come out a little bit differently because there's more fat in the almond meal than the hazelnuts. They'll kind of be a bit chewier and they'll spread a little bit more when you make them, but you can use almond meal. Right, I'm going to pop that in there, and then a whopping 200 grams of caster sugar. As you can see, it's serious cake. See that big chunk there? That's like an iceberg. There we go. I'm going to put that in as well. Again, it's another one of our recipes that freezes really well. So you can make a couple of them, particularly if you do get a heap of lemons from a friend, and pop them into the freezer. We're going to make it in a loaf tin. There are a couple of other options for that, so you'd actually be able to cut it down into some nice blocks and shapes and just put it aside in the freezer for special occasions. Unsalted butter. It says unsalted, but I've got salted today. It's not really going to make much difference. So we can put the scales out of the way. So 200 grams, and I've just got a basic block here. So it's got those cute little markings on it that I can just chop off. 50 grams, and pop the rest in to my new Pyrex jug, Pauline. And I promise I will not put it in the dishwasher. Someone else in the house might, but I won't, so that I keep all of my beautiful red writing on the side. 20 seconds, please, Kate. Okay, so I'm going to add my eggs in first. When you see the freeze frame of the recipe, you will see that it says softened butter as opposed to melted. And what we've done is just popped it in the microwave for a very short time so that it just goes really soft. If you do want to use melted butter, one thing you've got to be careful of is the heat as it comes out of the microwave or out of the saucepan. If it's too hot, it will cook the eggs. So you've just got to be a little bit careful. I'm going to grab a fork and give that a little bit of a swish around, and then I'll grab my butter off Kate. Thanks, mate. And we'll pop that in. I love these recipes that are really just one bowl, one step. Then we'll pop in our lemon zest or grated lemon rind. We do put a syrup over the top of this cake as well, so it's going to be super citrusy when we're finished. Again, no flash juicer. I've got my beautiful old glass one that I've had forever. So we're going to put the juice of 1 lemon in. Fun fact for Kate, when I was a teenager, I used to go into the lemon orchard and juice about 10 lemons and mix it with olive oil and comb it through my hair and lay in the sun for natural highlights. True. I don't know that Mum ever knew I did that, but I did. It worked. Not in a good way, but it worked. Oh, I think I had a pip go in. Okay, that's out. So everything that we need is now in this bowl, so we can give it a big stir. I have written down not to over whip it. Don't get the mixer out or anything. I just want you to slowly mix it all in together. They were a really nice batch of farm eggs, and you can see the colour. It's lovely. Oh, I don't want to become like one of those celebrity cooks that talks about how good or something looks or smells. Sorry, girls. Alright, I'm going to just give it a bit of a bash because I can see a couple of lumps of butter. And then that is ready to to go. So I'm just going to go and grab my loaf tin. Pop that there. I'll be back. I'll go and grab some spray oil because you do want to grease it a bit. I thought about using butter, but this is just so much easier and you get a nice even layer. So we're just going to spray that. This is the same one I used for the cornbread the other week. But if you want to get a bit fancy, Kate, can you pass those other 2 tins? So these are my other ones that I sometimes use. So this is a really flash one that you can see that has a curve. So when I turn it out, it'll sit like that. This is a very impressive way to make this cake, but I do need to heavily butter the pan to do it, and it will come up there for a little bit crisper on the outside, and then that means it's a bit harder to get the syrup to go through, but it will work. So if you've got a flash one, give it a go. This is the other one, and I love this pan. It's just a straight square one. It's not non-stick, so if I do use this one again, I will butter or oil it and put enough baking paper in it so the baking paper will come up and sit on the long sides above so I can lift it out with them. This is beautiful if you're getting really fancy for having friends over for a dinner party, because when you cut it, you're going to actually get square shaped slices, which is really nice. We're going to eat this one, so we're going to use a loaf tin, and I want to show you how it comes out in a normal size tin. Okay, so this is all going to go in. It's already lightened up a little bit. When you make a cake mix, this is the old food tech coming out of me, nothing fancy though, I promise. It's the baking powder that we've already put in that's starting to react and aerate our mix, and particularly because it's citrus and it's acidic, and that's what's going to give it a lot of its lightness when it's finished. I'm just going to smooth that over in the pan a little bit. There we go. A little bit of wipe down with my finger. Now, depending on how fancy you want it to look or how rustic, you can make the top smooth or rough. Wipe down the side. And there we go. All ready to pop in the oven. Now this one does take a while to cook. I usually give it about 45 minutes, but keep an eye on it. Every oven's going to be a little bit different, and it goes in at 180 degrees. So I'm going to pop this in and we can go back and finish off our sewing for today. Okay, now girls, so far we have talked about sandpaper and straight circles. I showed you my blue work quilt. We looked at the applique quilt. Oh, and I showed you the charm square quilt that I'm making with the circles with the quarters we've made with a 4-patch block. Now we went and put the cake in the oven. So we're up to here, and this says fussy cutting. So this is where I get to show you what I'm working on for the bathroom renovation. Now, in the leftovers show next week, I will clean my bathroom, and I'm going to take you into my bathroom, because while we're renting, we're going to be here for a little while I get the plans done, find somewhere to build it, and then we're going to go through that whole exciting process. I'm calling it exciting now because I know it becomes a nightmare, but it's on the bucket list. We have to do it. So while we're here in our little ensuite, Kate and I are going to show you what I want to do next week. And one of them is to create a little bit of artwork, if you like, for the wall. It's a blue bathroom. Blue bathrooms are genetically not acceptable in my family. Mum will tell you that. But we do have to live with it for now. So what I'm doing is fussy cutting, I suppose, some of the fans off my Summer Palace fabric, and 2 of them are suitable for this pre-shaping technique I've shown you today, because if you have a think about it, we're okay while we do, Kate, are they convex or concave if they go like that? the look on her face. They're right if they go that way, but we can't use it for doing a curve that goes that way. That's another technique. We'll do another day. But we're okay if it's concave. I'm sure it is. I don't remember. Go this way. I'll get how many emails and messages saying, Leesa, know your maths, but we want to go that way. So I can do circles, but I can also do oval shapes. You could do egg shapes. Oh, if you've got an egg cutter that you only use every Easter for Easter biscuits, you could do a beautiful little Easter egg quilt where you've got pre-shaped Easter eggs and put rick-rack across them, all sorts of different things. All right, but here's this fabric. So you can see on here, I'll unwind it a little bit more. In fact, I'll go close up here. So can you see that circle? There's a circle one here, and then further down there is this one that's almost like a fan tear shape. So if I hold that up, you can see. So two of them on this print that I originally did are going to work for our sandpaper method. So what I have done to do those, they're down here. First of all, I got out some of that clear plastic I showed you a couple of weeks ago that I use, that's you can buy as book protectors or something, and it's the shiny stuff. And it's nice and thin, so it's flexible. When you need to do a really sturdy template, get out the template plastic, but for one-offs like this stuff's perfect. So what I did was laid some of it over my fan shape here and drew it on and cut it out. And that actually gives me what is essentially going to be my template that I pre-shape around. Then I went and cut that fan out of my fabric, again leaving a very generous 1/4 inch seam allowance because I knew I wanted to pad it out with some batting behind it. Now, because I was running low on sandpaper, I did cut my templates out of cardboard. So I would really like to do these usually with sandpaper. However, I will say that once I got it inside the shape, when I pulled the edges of the seam allowance up over it, having a little bit of slip and slide wasn't a bad thing because it meant that I could reposition and make sure it was sitting perfectly lined up with the edges of the motif that I'd cut out. I also have one that's a circle that I've done, and it is really hard to draw up and shape a perfect circle, so I had a hunt through my plate cupboard and I did manage to find one exactly the same size. If you can't, then all you need to do is head on to Google, please draw a 5.5 inch circle, and there's lots of ways that you can quickly get one drawn up, or pop one on a photocopier if you've got access to one and just increase or decrease the size until you get it to where you want it. So here's where I'm at with the bathroom artwork. Rob's going to die. But I have already slip stitched on my circle. So that's the circle one you can see on there. So if I hold that up, you can see. And it is, yes, padded out like I did with my Oriental blue work. It's got some pellin behind it. And on the back, just to show you, so you can see all of my thread is on the back of my work, and you can't see any on the front. Cameo shot from the cat. On you, Jen. Alright, so, and this is the other one. Now I haven't sewn this one on yet, but this is my tear-shaped or my fan-shaped lantern here. You can see, I've got it tacked on. And there are a few little lumps and bumps around the edges, I will admit, but the beauty of this is when I go back and slip stitch them on, I've got the edge of the motif to follow as well. So I'll be able to pull all those little edges in with my applique slip stitching. When we come back and do needle turn, Kate and I will set the cameras up so you can really see it really well, so that we're showing you exactly how it's done to get the perfect edge, if you haven't already got that down pat. Now, what am I going to do with these once they're on? Well, obviously I need some handles for my fans like it had on the print. So I'm going to go back to this one. And we'll just pull the fabric in. Where is it? Just for a bit of inspiration. That's what it looked like. So that's it there. And that's what it looked like on the fabric. So it had, can you see that? It had a little, there it is. It had a little twisted handle on it, only a short one. So I will have a little bit of a play, but what I've decided to use is some pearl thread so that I can couch it as well. So I will get this done and show you in leftovers, but I'm going to do a little running stitch with a cream pearl thread, and then I've got this beautiful grey. Don't you love it when you find stuff in your stash? Now this is a new stash for me. Leanne was cleaning out her sewing room and she found all this pearl thread that she didn't want, and I said yes please, because when someone donates something to you from a stash, you always say yes, because it's important to see if there's anything you want, and even more importantly, then I can pass it on to other people that I think might be able to use it. So I'm going to do a running stitch with my cream, and then I'm going to do a whip stitch with my grey. And a little bit like sashiko stitching, I suppose, a really nice big gathered stitch. And if you're saying, Leesa, there's no way I could get that nice and even, there's a trick. Do you remember this stuff when we all used to hand quilt? Bring out the tiger tape. So just have a look in your stash and see if you have some from days gone by. I just want to pull this out of its packaging. From days gone by when you used to have a go at hand quilting, or you might still use it now. Look, those paper scissors are so blunt, they won't even cut the plastic. Alright, now you can see the old tiger tape, and on the back it actually shows you how to use it. We're going to use it twice today. So if you do struggle with getting a nice even stitch, oh, here it is, I was going to say, and this is where I can't find the end of it. There is my, well, that makes a good sound. Do you like that? And it's sticky. So this is so cool. All I need to do is stick it on. Oh, actually, this is even better. If I can get that, I'll go back and check later, girls, but if I put that, oh, too easy, right in the middle. Can you see that? Hold it up there for you. So I've got my tiger tape on, and tiger tape is 1/4 of an inch wide. So that is going to be the whole guideline for making my handle for this particular fan. So I'll then be able to evenly stitch, because I'll use the little lines that have been drawn on the tape as a guide. So my stitches will be really nice and even, and then I'll go back and whip stitch them. And I'm going to do a straight handle down each side of that tiger tape. So I've got a really nice straight, perfect handle, maybe a little 3D tassel on the end. With the other one, I might do something a little bit different. Hey Jen, a little bit different. So maybe a little bit of a twist, but I'll have a play, and again, I'll show you what I get up to next time. So they should look good. Oh, see this one here? He actually has cherry blossoms on him. So I think it would be really nice to embellish some more of these particular canvases I'm going to put on the wall with some cherry blossoms. And I've also got in here my stash of silver beads. Seriously. And some bigger ones. So I'm going to have lots of fun with those. Okay, cherry blossoms. So in here, oh, cherry blossoms, wait, I have to show you these. Let me get this out of the way. This is the first of ours for the season. So record this, we were filming just before spring. Oh, okay, maybe I should have left it on the tree. I'm going to be short about 10 cherries optimistically now, but I couldn't resist bringing some of it inside because it's nearly springtime. I'm very excited. I have to order my netting for all the fruit trees down the side of this house in the next couple of weeks, so we're good to go. I'm not relying on Ginny to keep all of the birds under control. Okay, so in here I've got pre-shaped to show you. some more circles that have been cut from the same fabric as my fans, and I've just randomly gone through and placed a sandpaper template over the fabric. I have focused on some of the blue to get a bit of a contrast, but I'm also setting my fans onto its really nice steel blue linen, so the contrast is going to be good even if I use the grey ones. It'll be good. Okay, so we'll stick the glasses on. So their seam allowances have been turned over and pressed onto the back. Now we can turn them into some Suffolk puffs and some cherry blossoms. So once we've got these like this, we're going to pop and knotted needle underneath up onto the fold, and we're going to do a running stitch. Nice big one, about 1/4 inch gaps right round the edge. It always amazes me how many different ways there are to make a Suffolk puff or a yo-yo, and I know a lot of them do involve some pretty cool gadgets. But then the limitation is that you are limited by the size of the templates that you have. And some of the gadgets for making yo-yos and Suffolk puffs, they don't handle really thick fabrics really well, or high thread count. They're fine with a thin lawn fabric or a thin cotton, but they don't work with these high thread count Japanese made fabrics. So you might find, if you have struggled with using one of those, give this a go as well. And of course then you can make them any size that you like. One of the classic sizes that I like is my cotton reel size for my sandpaper template, because then I know I've always got it with me. You can see this time I'm gathering up as I go. Give it a good tug, and you can see I'm putting a lot of tension and tug onto that thread, and also I can because I've used my hand quilting cotton. You can use normal cotton, but there'll be tears if you use something that's been sitting around in the sewing basket for many years. It was your grandmother's, you've picked it up in a sale. Just stick to the good stuff and use a nice strong new thread. Okay, so there is my Suffolk puff. So these of course have hundreds and hundreds of uses, and that would really nicely embellish, actually that would embellish the end of my fan handle really nicely. We might use one of those, but what I want to do now is actually turn it into a cherry blossom. So I've gone back up through the middle, and I'm going to go down through the middle, and I'm just setting myself up so my thread is directly in the bottom of the circle underneath the Suffolk puff. Then I'm going to bring my thread up and over the edge and go down through the middle again and give this a good tug, and it's going to pull in the edge of my Suffolk puff. Now what I'm going to do is split it up into 5. Oh, I've got to go this way. I can't help myself. I've got to go this way. It's a little bit like when you go to the supermarket. I can only go in one direction. If I try and go backwards, I forget things. Okay. If you haven't done this before and you're like, well, Leesa, there's no way I'd be able to split evenly into 5 petals, then start with 4. Tradition shows that 4 petals is a Chinese plum blossom as opposed to 5. You will also see as I go that I'm going over the same spot twice and giving it a really good tug. these become second nature after a while, and I have made thousands of them. I would say I've made 1,000 towards the centre of a large 2-metre sunflower that's been on the go. Well, the boys were doing swimming lessons. Oh, I broke my thread. Did you see that? I broke my thread. Talking too much and pulling too hard. The boys were swimming, learning to swim. So 16 years. It will get finished one day. Alright, so I broke my thread, so I'm just going over the same spot again. That's a good thing to happen while demonstrating. There'll be no tears. Alright, last one. Down through the middle of the last bit. This thread looks like it's all springy, and it is because it's a quilting cotton. That's the only reason. Okay. There we go, with a little bit of trial and tribulation. There is my cherry blossom, all finished. So we'll just set these aside. Can you see that okay? Can you see that okay, Miss Kate? So I can show the girls. There you go. So that's my first one, and I'm going to make these ones up as well. I've got 6 drawn up. I thought maybe 3. So you can see I can actually put one over the top of the fan, or I can have some of them out the side, an embellishment. And in fact, that's what I think I'll do. I'm going to put a long handle on here. I've ordered some box frames online, and I'm not sure how big they are yet. I've forgotten. So when they get here, I'll be able to work out how long my handles can be. And then I maybe in the background behind the fan, I'm going to do some silver stems and pop my little cherry blossoms on as a little bit of extra embellishment. The fabric also has dragonflies on it, so some of those might end up in them as well. So there you go, that's a little project. Keep me honest and I'll make sure I get that done for you next week. If I haven't, I'll use the fact that the frames haven't arrived as an excuse. Now in here as well, I'll just pull out and show you my little treasure box. I've also got some other ones here that I've been making for a new, probably we'll call it an Indian or Middle Eastern bag. And I have some of those gorgeous, what are they called? Mirrors. There's a special name, Yazzie will kill me. But they're a little mirror that they use a lot in embellishment in Indian and Middle Eastern textiles. And I can sit those inside my Suffolk cuff. So to do this, you're going to go through the same process and get your circles ready with the seam allowance pulled over. Now, this is probably one time when I'm really going to say, make sure that you have a matching thread, because you may see a little of it. Where did I put that needle? This one. So I've pulled my edges over as the first step, and then I have glued one of the mirrors into the center on the wrong side of the fabric. There you go. Shiny. So now I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to pull the edge up, but this time it's going to come up and over the edge of the mirror. Now when we're making cherry blossoms, you want to keep your stitches quite big so they pull in tight to the middle, but you can go a little bit smaller with these because you do want to see some of the middle so that it reveals some of the mirror inside. So I'm just going to get around this one. If you're trying to work out the best size to use for the diameter of your sandpaper template, I have worked out the best rule of thumb is that it is twice the diameter of your little mirror. So if your mirror is 1 inch across, then you're going to want a 2-inch diameter sandpaper template to give you enough of your mirror to show in the middle. If you see this fabric here, that is a flashback, girls. That is a massive flashback. When I stash, I stash. So you might stash 2 meters. I stash 6 bolts. And I have stashed in my studio, there we go, I have stashed in my studio quite a few bolts of that paisley because I just, when we had finished the whole range and it was nearly all gone, I just couldn't part with it. So I am going to start using it now, and the first thing is we're going to do a tote bag with these little mirror puffs, let's call them, as the embellishment. I'm nearly there. Does get a little bit awkward towards the end. Okay, there you go. Oh, that's not too bad. So you can see I've got my little Suffolk puff with my bells ringing in the background. Ginny, sit down. There you go. So I've got quite a few of those to make. To secure this off, just a couple of stitches on the top, and then that's why you need to use a matching thread just in case a couple of them show. So that's something else I have to get finished to show you. And you can see I've got bright red and the purple paisley and the gold and then our teal, so that will match all of those colours up together. Right, I've got one more major thing to show you. I'm just going to go and check on the cake and then we'll come back. Okay, we've done the okay, we've done cherry blossoms and the cake's got about 8 minutes to go, so I have to move. Now there's one more thing I wanted to show you that doesn't involve a complete circle or a complete shape, and that is that you can use the same technique for doing clam shells and fan shapes and Dresdens. So I'm just going to run you through how to cut out your templates, and I think we've covered enough today that you'll be able to work out how to do them yourself as well. So first thing, I've got some of this Summer Palace fabric here, of course, to show you as an example. Now I would like to make some more traditional Japanese style shaped fans out of this fabric, and to do that I need two things. I need the curve and I need the angle of the base of the fan. The easiest one to start with is just a straight right angle. So if I use my ruler, this is going to be 90 degrees, but keep in mind if you're just making them up as you go, you can make them any angle that you want, but to get that real traditional look, you want your angle to be at least 90 degrees. Any narrower and it's going to look more like a Dresden wedge or an ice cream cone. So I'm going to lay my ruler over the top, and because it's see-through I can start to get an idea of what my fan is going to look like. And I don't mind if my design is chopped off a little bit. The main thing is that I've got enough detail in there to use it and it looks really pretty. So I'm going to sit mine there, and again so that you can see it today, I'm going to draw this on. It could even be on that angle, or it could be on that angle, but because I've got the vases going straight up, I think we better keep it pretty straight. So I'm going to draw down each side. This particular ruler template is 7 inches, so I know that each of these lines I have drawn are 7 inches long, and it's important that you work with them at the same length. Then what I can do is find something in the cupboard to use for my curve. So I've pulled out one of my dinner plates, and I can sit that so the edges of it sit right up to the end of those two lines that I've just drawn, and that is going to be my curve. So that's going to give me a fan. There you go. That's going to give me a fan that's a really nice shape, that's got some pretty detail in the middle. And once I've got one done, if I really like the shape of it, I will probably put one of those clear pieces of plastic over the top and make a template of it, so I can then use it and copy it for other ones. The other thing that you can do if you want it shorter, is just bring it down further down. So I go back and mark those straight sides, maybe down to 6 inch or 5 inch, and then I'm going to have a shorter fan. And the other thing is, if I decided that the curve is too steep for the effect that I want, then I have to go back into the kitchen and find a bigger plate, because the bigger the plate, the flatter the curve is going to be that I use on my fan. So I'd probably head to the cupboard that's got all of the cake platters and the cake stands and the finger food platters in it. They're a bit bigger than a dinner plate. So now that I've got that drawn on, all I need to do is add my 1/4 inch seam. Now, as you know, when you make this into a template to shape around, that curved edge, it's not going to matter as long as it is a good generous 1/4 inch seam, because the template that you use is going to give you the finished shape of the curve. But because we've got straight edges on this particular fan shape as well, I'm going to draw on a 1/4 inch seam because I want to show you something. Now I'm going to quickly cut this out, because one of the challenges if you do this shape is to get a really nice straight edge to your straight sides. Now you can fold it over your cardboard template or your sandpaper template, but I'll show you another little trick. I'll just cut around here. Oh, I'm looking forward to using this. I'm going to have to do a heap of them now after I oil the scissors. Okay, that's just so funny. I've never noticed. These were one of the ones that I had sharpened the other week, so I think they've tightened them, which is fantastic, but now they need a bit of oil. Okay, so that is my cut out fan, and I'm going to have my template that I can pop on the back and pull the seam allowance up and over it. But to get these straight edges, remember we talked about the tiger tape? This is a 1/4 inch. So you can also, as a little trick, use your tiger tape to get your straight edge. So I'm going to stick that along there. You see what I'm doing? All right, so trim that off, and then when I go to the ironing board, and I would, it's a personal preference, but I like to do my straight edges first and then the curve. Whichever way around you do it, you're going to have to tuck a little seam allowance over while you're while you're slip stitching it on. But as you can see, what I can do now is really accurately use the tape as a guide to fold over that edge and press it. So when I hit that with the iron, I'm going to have this beautiful straight curve. Sorry, beautiful straight curve, did you like that? Beautiful straight edge. And then when it's folded over, I'll be able to rip off my tiger tape and it will stay down. And if it doesn't stay down, just put a little bit of fabric glue in there and it's going to hold it nice and flat and straight for you while you do your curve. So just as an idea, and look, the tiger tape can be used for so many different things. I use it sometimes as a guide just for where my seam allowances are when I'm doing hand piecing. It's has many uses. Okay, so that's that one aside. And then the final one that I want to show you today.
Cake?
Sorry? Cake? You want cake?
No, is it time? Because it's been 6 minutes.
I can't hear the buzzer yet. We'll be right. I'll get it done. All right, so can you hear my stomach growling? No?
It's a plane.
It's a plane. So the final one I want to show you today is customizing your templates for a particular fabric. So this is my Melba fan fabric, and I'm getting really excited because we've got some new colours coming of this soon that we're going to do some new projects with. Oh, actually I've got strike-offs. I'll show them to you in leftovers next week. So I have made the perfect Dresden shape to go on my fabric. So if you have a look, okay, can you do a thingy so I can lift it up so I can show the girls? There you go. So you can see that I've made it so that I've got, that's it, so that I've got a perfect 1/4 inch, almost right round the top of one of the fan motifs, and then it comes right down in a point to here. Now this is a 30-degree inch, and a lot of you will have Dresden templates in your stash, in your sewing room. So how to start think about fussy cutting to use them with the Dresden. So I've made one of these, and we're actually going to make some of these in Perspex so that we've got them as well handy. And then I've made one up in my sandpaper. So I will be able to use this to fussy cut out with the clear one some of the fan motif into Dresden wedges, and then with my sandpaper one I'm going to be able to do my gathered stitch right around the edge on the curve, and then I'll use my tiger tape to mark the 1/4 inch seam down each side, and then the 1/4 inch seam shown with the tiger tape will give me a really lovely accurate edge to work with when I'm hand piecing them together. And I'm going to do them in this cream, and I'm going to do them in the green. I can hear the buzzer going, so the cake's ready, and I'm going to set them onto this gorgeous soft gold. So thank you, you've given me heaps that I have to get done by next week's leftover show, and let's go and have some cake. So that's our lemon almond syrup cake for today. As you can see, whenever I do lemons, I have to add lavender. So I hope you enjoy the recipe. Remember, it will freeze really well. Of course, I've done a lemon version today, but if you have limes or oranges, it will work just as well with those. I hope you've enjoyed the pre-shaping and that you'll find lots of uses for it, and I look forward to showing you some more things that I've finished off with these techniques next week. Thanks, bye.